Another way to combine objects is to use Maya's booleans, which allow you to add and subtract objects from each other. So let's take a look at how this works. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead into my channel box, and under layers, I'm going to go ahead and hide the parts layer. We'll get back to this object in a bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and create two objects here. I'm going to create a basic box and then a cylinder. Now I'm going to take my cylinder, I'm going to use my move tool here, and I'm going to move it so that it's partially inside the box. So if I look at this in wireframe, you'll see that I want this to be basically inside the box, but not totally. So the Boolean command basically allows you to add objects together or create differences, in other words, subtract them. And let's show you how this works. You can find it under the Mesh menu here. And we have three options for Booleans. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and tear this off so we can see it a little bit more easily. We have union, difference, and intersection. Union basically combines the two together. So if I select my cylinder and shift select my box, I can do union, and that'll basically just combine them together. And if I look at that in wireframe, basically what it's done is it's trimmed off that portion of the cylinder that was inside the box, and it's just made that into one object. Now I could have used this to create the hand in the previous exercise as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and undo this, and you can see now we're back to normal here. And the next one is called difference. So basically this subtracts one object from the other. Now this is one where selection order is important. The last object selected will be basically what we call the cutting tool. It'll be the object that is subtracted. So I want to subtract the cylinder from the box to create a hole in it. So I'm going to select the box first, and then shift select the cylinder, and then hit difference. And when I do, it subtracts the cylinder from the box and creates a nice little hole. Kind of cool. I'm going to undo that, and let's actually do that in reverse to see what happens. So I'm going to select the box last. So in this case, I'm selecting the box from the cylinder. And so what that does is it basically just lops off the bottom of the cylinder. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And then the last operation is called intersection. And that really just shows you the place where both objects overlap. In other words, the intersection of those objects. So if I select one and then the other and hit intersection, it will basically show me the area that overlaps, which will basically be the bottom of the cylinder. So as you can see, these are very handy tools to quickly sketch out geometry. But one of the things you have to be careful about with Booleans is that the geometry they create is what's called non-regular. So when you get to things like smoothing or subdivision surfaces, you can have a lot of problems with this. This works best for mechanical objects that aren't deformed or smoothed. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this object here. And let's go into our parts here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this layer here for parts. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the arm layer as well. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to use a Boolean to create this slot in our character's hand. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off this arm layer. So how would we do that? Well, probably the easiest way to do that is just create a box and use that as a cutting tool. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a simple box. It needs to be wider and slightly bigger than that hand. And really the size isn't that important. It's really just how big of a channel am I going to cut out of this. So I'm going to actually hop out into my front viewport here. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and center this. And then I'm going to use my scale tool. I'm going to go ahead and scale this down a little bit and just move it up so that it's about the right place that I want. Okay, so really all I'm looking for is that for this to intersect with this exactly in the place that I want to create the effect that I want. I could probably move this up just a little bit more. Okay. So now this box is basically going to be my cutting tool. So this is the last thing I'm going to select. So I select my hand base, shift select the box, and just hit difference. And there we go. So now I have a slot in that hand body. Now this is probably a little bit different than the one I created for the arm, but as you can see, the process is identical for creating both of these. So Booleans work by adding, subtracting, or creating a difference between objects. And you need to be careful with Booleans and objects that either deform or smooth because you can get adverse effects.